This film stands as the most brutal in the Jigsaw series, while also offering the sharpest critique of social issues. As the core narrative link of the Jigsaw universe, it not only explains the truth of Amanda's death but also uses a new type of trap, closely tied to the dark secrets of healthcare, to directly transform the abstract question of how capital values life into shocking violent aesthetics. It then guides everyone to dissect the hidden human currents within this trial of life. The story continues from the fifth installment. After Hoffman emerges from the glass box, he immediately restores the device in the secret room. As the door opens, Strom, who has been crushed into fatal remains, loses his support and falls down. Looking at the intact hand on the wire mesh, Hoffman thinks of a way to escape suspicion. He decides to continue imitating Jigsaw's crimes, creating the illusion that Strom is not dead, thereby misleading the detective's judgment. He chooses two predators who exploit people through usury.
Hello. I want to play a game. The devices on your heads are symbolic of the shackles that you place upon others. You recklessly loan people money, knowing their financial limitations, counting on repossessing more than they could ever pay back. You are predators, but today you become the prey, and it is your own pound of flesh that I demand.
Hoffman designs a game for two people, which he calls Flesh Sacrifice. If they want to leave this place, they must use the knives on the table to cut off their own flesh and place it on the scale in the middle to be weighed. Ultimately, the one who performs more severe self-harm survives. The time limit is 60 seconds. Once this time is exceeded, the screws on the head device engage and then critical impalement both of their skulls. As the video content ends, the device on their heads immediately activates. Realizing it is not a prank, Eddie first picks up a knife and cuts fiercely towards the excess fat on his abdomen. Simona tries to imitate him, but when she tears open her clothes, what is revealed is a flat abdomen. Having no other way, she can only choose to use her arm to fight for survival. But before she even ties the tourniquet, Eddie then cuts a gash in his stomach. Simona, according to the direction of the knife, continuously adjusts the cutting position. With great difficulty, she cuts open her skin. Unexpectedly, Eddie puts the flesh on the scale and then cuts a second piece. As the scale's pointer is about to reach the required mark, Simone has no choice but to move the knife towards her elbow joint. Who would have thought that as soon as she cuts her skin, Eddie already starts cutting his third piece of flesh. In desperation, Simone directly picks up the cleaver from the table. Ultimately, Simone wins with a huge advantage. Eddie, on the other hand, has his skull critical impalement by screws. He falls to the ground, lifeless. After Simone leaves the bureau, Hoffman enters the secret room holding the severed evidence. He leaves Strom's fingerprints on the corpse and the device. The facts are just as he expects. Erickson indeed has no suspicion whatsoever. But what shocks Hoffman is that Perez, who should have been in the urn, unexpectedly appears here.
Perez.
It was my call, Detective. I knew that Jigsaw wasn't working alone, but until I knew for certain who was helping him, I couldn't guarantee her well-being.
So you let me think she was dead?
Well, I didn't know who I could trust.
What else have you been keeping from me?
In order to close the case quickly, Perez directly reveals the information she has. She and Strom once investigate a real estate fraud case. At that time, 5 people participate in setting the building on fire. But due to the disappearance of a key witness, they cannot accuse the 5 people and can only let the police release them. These 5 people are exactly Brett's group who were killed before. Viewers who do not understand this can watch the explanation of the 5th part. Next, they continue to return to the plot. Seeing that the two completely regard Strom as an insider, Hoffman does not plan to waste any more time. Unexpectedly, she proposes to cooperate.
You led me to believe that she was dead, and you want to work with me?
Look, We're offering full disclosure, Detective. From now on, everything we know, you know. Is that fair?
Hoffman hears this and immediately agrees to cooperate. Then he comes to the hospital to check on her condition. Unexpectedly, as soon as he gets off the elevator, a reporter who specializes in reporting on Jigsaw blocks his path. Hoffman originally does not want to deal with her. However, he unexpectedly learns that Jigsaw leaves a box for her before he dies.
How do you know it?
Probate court. It's public record for those who know where to look.
All right. What do you really want?
Jill Tuck. Help me get to her, and I'll dial down the sensationalism.
Really? I'll see what I can do.
Hoffman turns and walks into the ward. When Hoffman discovers Simona has no memory of the kidnapping, he is completely relieved. Meanwhile, Jill is playing the video from the prenatal checkup. As she looks at Jigsaw's smile, images from the past appear in her mind. After news reports about Dr. Matthews' disappearance, she tried to persuade Jigsaw to stop, but Jigsaw, as expected, refused.
I promise you, when all this is done, I will provide a way out for you.
I wish that time was now.
Then I have something for you.
What's this for?
When the time's right, you'll know what to do.
Thinking of this, Jill takes out the contents of the box. The truth is also as she expected. Jigsaw indeed leaves a hint in the sixth envelope. What surprises her is that a familiar name appears inside. When she discovers that Cecil, who caused her miscarriage, was actually instructed by Amanda to steal the medicine, Jill's sorrow is instantly replaced by anger. The most urgent task at hand is to fulfill Jigsaw's last wish. Just then, the phone suddenly rings. Hearing that familiar voice, Jill immediately picks up the second envelope. Inside, she sees Pamela's file. Meanwhile, at the police station, the medical examiner compares photos of previous victims and discovers the jigsaw mark on Eddie's body is cut by a serrated blade. Previous marks were made with high-quality scalpels. When he hears that only the mark on Seth's body is exactly the same as Eddie's, Hoffman's heart is immediately filled with turmoil. He never expects Jigsaw to still play a trick on him even after death. He tries to deny the medical examiner's judgment. After all, how can a few photos possibly reveal such subtle differences? However, he is told that all bodies from the Jigsaw case were personally autopsied by the medical examiner. Therefore, he is very certain there are two different types of blades. When he hears Erickson wants to find the videotape from Seth's case, Hoffman's expression instantly becomes grim. He then rushes to Jill's clinic. He clearly knows that Jigsaw allows him and Amanda to join in order to continue his philosophy. Combining this with the tape found in the stomach, he concludes that Jigsaw does this to warn him. Knowing Hoffman's objective is the box, Jill immediately takes out the envelope. I need to point out one detail here. Jigsaw clearly leaves several items, but only 5 envelopes are on the table. As for why Jill hides some things, the answer lies in Jigsaw's last will. The narrative continues. Hearing that Jigsaw leaves nothing else and only asks him to test the people in the envelopes, Hoffman coldly warns Jill that after this game, he will no longer be associated with Jigsaw. He then leaves the room without looking back. However, he never expects that from the moment he steps into the clinic, he falls into a trap designed by Jigsaw. Looking at the woman pleading in the hall, past scenes instantly appear in Jill's mind. At that time, after testing Amanda, Jigsaw brings her to the clinic. He notes the details in the following conversation. It not only reveals the core of Jigsaw's game, it also implies Jill is the hidden successor to Jigsaw's ideology.
But what about these people, Jill, who come here every day and use you? They bide their time. They're avoiding prison sentences. They're getting hooked on masking agents. Do you call that recovery?
It's not that simple.
Addiction is not simple. Jill, wake up! These people have no respect for the lives that they're destroying. Once you see death up close, then you know what the value of life is. And that's my way. And I brought proof that it works.
Thinking of this, Jill instantly realizes how terribly wrong she was. According to the contents of the sixth envelope and Jigsaw's criteria for choosing targets. But he instead gives his enemy a chance to live. Recalling Amanda's regretful gaze, Jill's anger immediately dissipates. Then she takes that yellow paper bag and walks into the hospital mentioned in the letter. After confirming the specific room, she directly inserts it through the mail slot. Unaware of this, Hoffman has already tied up everyone from the envelope in the secret room. The most crucial person among them is William. He is the senior vice president of the claims department at an insurance company. Primarily responsible for medical insurance claims and applications. He also has a highly efficient team. A 6-person group responsible for finding loopholes in client claims. They are like hounds. Any medical history related to a claimed illness is used as a reason to deny coverage. When they encounter difficult clients who insist on appealing, the lawyer Debbie steps in to handle them. Even if someone passes the review, the operator Andy delays them for a period. Aaron, who is responsible for screening, rejects some worthless clients at the application stage. With their tacit cooperation, many patients are driven to desperation due to their inability to obtain claims. Jigsaw is one of the victims of this formula. At that time, after he is pushed by Lynn to Lawrence, he discovers a Norwegian doctor's gene therapy technique has a 40% success rate. More importantly, this doctor is conducting a new trial with a high chance of curing his cancer. However, William rejects his medical insurance application, citing his old age. He is fully capable of paying for the treatment himself. But thinking about those ordinary people who have hope for a cure but are denied eligibility by this cold-blooded formula, Jigsaw becomes completely disappointed with the insurance company. So he leaves an envelope, instructing Hoffman to capture William and all relevant personnel for a test. Viewers unfamiliar with Lynn and Lawrence can watch the explanations of the previous films. This also includes the detailed process of Amanda undergoing her test until her death. Next, the story continues. Watching the content on the television, William immediately stops struggling. He knows very well that if this matter is truly related to Jigsaw, then only by following the instructions can he find a glimmer of hope for survival.
Hello, William.
Oh, jeez.
You've probably been wondering when we would see each other again. Today is that day. For years, your probability formula has decided the fate of others. The healthy have benefited while the potentially sick have been unjustly rejected. However, this formula does not take into account the human will to live. When faced with death, who should live versus who will live are two entirely separate things. Today, your policy will be put to the test. There are 4 straps around your limbs, and you have 4 tests you must complete. For if you don't, the straps on your arms and legs will detonate. Look closely. You have 60 minutes to complete your tests and avoid this fate. Starting now. You are not alone in this game. Just as you have taken loved ones away from their families, if you don't reach the end before the timer hits 0, you will never see your family again.
Meanwhile, a mother and son in another secret room wake up. But before they can figure out the situation, she is stunned by the content on the TV. When she sees the hydrofluoric acid barrels in the room and the buttons marked with life and death, Tara immediately understands her situation. Previously, her husband Harold went to apply for medical insurance claims. But the group of 6 discovers that Harold had a surgery to remove a jaw cyst.
This is absurd. I have heart disease. It has nothing to do with some oral surgery I had 30 years ago.
Any type of oral surgery is going to leave scar tissue. Scar tissue can lead to gum disease, and as you well know, gum disease can cause heart disease.
Seeing that his 10 years of insurance premiums are about to be voided, Harold can no longer remain rational. But all he gets is the phrase, "follow the rules." Ultimately, Harold dies with regret because he cannot afford the treatment costs. Viewers who have seen the previous installments definitely know that anyone targeted by Jigsaw is someone he considers guilty. As for why Tara and her son are tied up in the secret room, the answer lies with William. The story continues. As the photos of the two are fixed on the wall, the first test officially begins. Jigsaw designs a device for the two men, which is a combination of a tidal volume monitor and a hydraulic press. After activation, with each breath of oxygen, the giant clamps on their waists tighten until their bodies are crushed. The only way to pass the test is to hold one's breath longer than the other person. Looking at Hank's face contorted from lack of oxygen, William feels an incredible shock. He remembers very clearly that Hank not only suffers from high blood pressure and heart disease but also has a smoking history of 52 years. It's precisely because of this that even though Hank is the department's cleaner, he did not pass the medical insurance application. But now, the time the other person holds his breath, though not as long as his own, a veteran's physique, far exceeds many so-called healthy ordinary people. At this moment, William cannot help but doubt his own formulas and theories. Just then, the device suddenly resets automatically. William quickly takes off the breathing mask and tries to unbuckle the belt. But as soon as he moves his body, a sharp pain comes from his abdomen. Caught off guard, he falls directly to the ground. After he lifts his clothes, he sees a gash clearly cut open on his abdomen. William has no time to think further. He quickly removes the bomb from his right hand. He continues forward, following the instructions. Soon, he finds the device for the second test. This time, he faces Auntie and Aaron. The former is old and frail. She has a family history of diabetes. The latter has no relatives and is very healthy. Chains are connected to the foot pedals beneath the two people. Next, what William must do is to release one of the chains. As the recording ends, the chains immediately begin to tighten. William tries to keep both people alive. But then he discovers that if he does not let go, he will be fatal dismemberment by the chains. Feeling the increasingly strong pull, he has no choice but to save one person. Looking at the lifeless Aaron, William finally understands the despair of those patients whose applications are rejected. He also realizes his own mistake. But currently, what is more important is to first complete the remaining tests. Upon seeing that two people are already dead, Tara intends to break the railing and leave. But she is told that once the human body comes into contact with hydrofluoric acid, it will be instantly chemically dissolved. While speaking, Brent notices something is wrong. When learning the wall might be a two-way mirror, Tara immediately yells. Hoffman sees this and walks towards another window. He sees that locked in the secret room is none other than Pamela, who was previously at the hospital. As a reporter, she not only distorts the truth for profit but also maliciously slanders Jigsaw's life. Most importantly, she is William's only relative. So Jigsaw has Hoffman capture her and test her here. Seeing Pamela pick up the recorder, Hoffman prepares to secure Debbie's photo. Who would have thought that just as he nails it to the wall, Erickson suddenly calls, learning that the other party found an important clue and wants to talk in person. He feels a bad premonition and immediately agrees. At the same time, William arrives at the secret room for the third test. Looking at the familiar recorder, he immediately takes it down.
Hello, William. You have seen the flaws in your policy, but what you have not seen is the extent some people will go to when faced with death. The lawyer from your firm has 90 seconds to cross this room, or the device attached to her chest will discharge and pierce her brain.
You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay.
She will find that the journey across this room is filled with danger. In order for her to make it, you will need to be there for her, and it is you who ultimately holds the key to her survival. When faced with death, will she have the skills to live? Let the game begin.
Seeing that Debbie's restraints are already removed, William guides her while walking towards the designated location. But just then, hot steam suddenly sprays from the pipe. When he sees the words, "Save her," on the sign, William instantly understands. To save Debbie, he must endure the scalding steam himself. Seeing that half the time has already passed, he pulls the handle without hesitation. However, he underestimates the power of the steam. The skin on his face is directly scalded. The intense pain makes William release his hand. Fortunately, Debbie reacts quickly. She only scalds her calf. But the two arrive at the designated location. William discovers the device's key is inside his stomach. William originally intends to tear open his wound to retrieve it. Unexpectedly, Debbie gives him no chance. Grabbing a chainsaw and rushing out, William tries to dissuade her, but it is completely useless. Then she kicks him in the groin, and he loses his ability to move. At this critical moment of life and death, the device's countdown simultaneously reaches 0. Seeing the lifeless Debbie, William completely breaks down, but the timer on the wall gives him no chance to recover. At the same time, Pamela, following the hints in the recording, presses the switch button. The content on the screen is clearly the live surveillance of William's test. Meanwhile, Hoffman finally rushes back to the police station. However, what he does not expect is that the two of them not only find the videotape of him punishing Seth, but also discover refrigerant on Eddie's eyelids. As Hoffman feels uneasy, the phone suddenly rings. Knowing that the voice extraction is nearing completion, Erickson immediately takes the two of them to the technical team. Seeing that his crimes are about to be exposed, Hoffman can no longer remain calm. But before he can think of a countermeasure, Perez begins analyzing the suspicious points in the case. Hoffman immediately senses something is wrong. He tries to disrupt their train of thought. Unexpectedly, before he finishes speaking, Erickson interrupts him.
You know, there is an alternative. Let's say that Strom killed Seth Baxter specifically to set you up as an accomplice to Jigsaw.
Okay.
But there's a problem with that, though. On further analysis of Strom's fingerprints, it was found that the uric acid levels and the eccringlam residue were inconsistent for an individual with an active epidural metabolism.
In other words?
In other words, when he left his fingerprints on the latest victim, Strom was already dead.
Right now,
There it is.
right now, you're feeling helpless.
After the three people are completely silent, Hoffman returns to the car, takes out the severed evidence, and once again leaves Strom's fingerprints at the scene. To ensure everything is foolproof, he also finds a large barrel of gasoline. However, he does not know that from the moment he kills Strom, his fate is already sealed. Jill walks into the monitoring room, first stuffing the things Jigsaw left into a cabinet, then placing a piece of paper on the table. Concurrently, William finally faces his fourth test. The reality is just as he expects. This time he faces the dog_pit_ team.
Hello, William. Before you are 6 of your most valuable associates, the ones who find errors in policies. Their findings result in over 2/3 of all applications denied or prematurely terminated. Now you must apply your analysis to them, and will you be able to find their errors? 6, ride the carousel. But only 2 can get off. The decision of which to survive falls upon you. But remember, the mounted gun will continue to fire until all 6 rounds are spent. And if no decision is made on your part, all 6 will perish. To offer the 2 reprieves, you must press both buttons at once in the box before you. However, in doing so, you'll give a sacrifice of your own. 2 can live, 4 will die. your decisions symbolized by the blood on your hands.
As the video ends, the device immediately starts operating. Listening to the pleas of the people, William quickly reaches his hand into the iron cage. But before he can figure out the switch, the first round already begins. Under the stimulation of blood, the 5 people all bring out their reasons to beg for help. But William already knows their situation, so he chooses the subordinate who has 2 children. Seeing that only 1 survival slot remains, the 4 people instantly tear off their disguises, madly slandering each other and digging up old wounds, just to prove that they are more qualified to live than their companions. The cruel and ironic scene makes William not know how to choose. Immediately after, the gunshots ring out again. Seeing that death is getting closer and closer, the 3 people completely fall into madness. William sees this and decides to randomly save one person, but he is seen as lusting after beauty. But immediately after, the 2 people's curses are interrupted by gunshots. Looking at the only 2 female subordinates left on the device, William's proud formulas and theories completely collapse. At the same time, Hoffman returns to the monitoring room. When Hoffman sees the paper Jill places on the table, a past scene immediately appears in his mind. At that time, after he and Amanda killed Detective Carey, they return to the factory to set up Jeff's 3rd test. Unexpectedly, Amanda uses this leverage to openly provoke him in front of Jigsaw. Although he knows Amanda is very likely to die in this test. To ensure foolproof, Hoffman still writes the truth about Jill's miscarriage on paper and stuffs it into the envelope Jigsaw leaves for Amanda, thereby forcing her to shoot Lynn. Ultimately, Amanda dies by Jeff's gun, and the truth about Carey's murder is also completely buried. Just as Hoffman is confused, Jill walks in holding a remote control. Caught off guard, he is immediately electrocuted and loses his ability to move. At the same time, William follows the instructions on the wall and rushes into the room in the last 2 seconds. But before he can catch his breath, the walls on both sides suddenly slide open. Looking at Taramu in the enclosure, William is full of disbelief. But the most urgent task now is to save his younger sister and leave. But before he can speak, the television in Taramu's room, it automatically switches to a video recording.
Hello, Tara. My apologies for exposing you and your son to this kind of treatment, but I can assure you it is not without reason. The man before you just made the sacrifices to save the life of a loved one. However, when given the opportunity to save your husband's life, he chose not to. Now you will be given the power to save a life. Will you grant this man the opportunity to continue living, or will you dispense the same death sentence he issued your husband? Live or die. The choice is yours.
As the video ends, William suddenly realizes that Tara and her son are the true protagonists of this game. Pamela also understands Jigsaw's purpose for kidnapping her, which is to make her witness firsthand the difference between redemption and slaughter. Seeing that her older brother is about to be executed, Pamela quickly pleads with Tara, but she is rebuffed and left speechless. Recalling his past actions, William does not know how to explain and can only beg again and again. Seeing that his mother cannot bring herself to do it, Brent directly steps forward and activates the device. Meanwhile, Jill places the reverse bear trap on Hoffman's head. She then takes out the photo from the 6th envelope. The narrator invites the audience to appreciate this textbook-level twist.
Game over.
John Kramer.
Really missed it.
Nice to meet you.
Those are the rules, Harris. You just giving me a death sentence.
So in a sense, you choose who lives or dies.
It's policy, John. It's policy.
You think it's the living that will have ultimate judgment over you, because the dead will have no claim over your soul. may be mistaken.
So when's your test, Detective?
I don't need one.
Oh, yeah?
You know why you're here, don't you? I want to know if you have what it takes to survive. You feel you now have control, don't you? You think you will walk away untested.
Finally, I briefly discusses why Jigsaw chooses to show his face directly in the video. There are two main reasons. Firstly, it is in the identity of a victim. He criticizes the core evil of the insurance company. Secondly, he wants the police to know the difference between him and Hoffman. He prevents Hoffman from distorting the facts after escaping. And the contents of that yellow paper bag are what he prepares to deal with this potential crisis as a backup plan. As for what is inside and who owns the office, the seventh part reveals the answer. Today's content ends here. Goodbye and see you again.